Looking good.
I like it. Not a bad way to spend a Friday night either.
No, sir. It keeps us off the streets. That's for sure.
That's exactly where I would be.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome back to Chuck and David Do a Thing. We're going to be working our way through these pieces from Car Wars by Steve Jackson Games. We talked about this on the previous episode. These are part of a STL set that you can download. For those who don't know, STLs are the files that are used in 3D printing. So they've got these really cool cars and accessories and stuff for making your own Car Wars related cars, or if you want to just do some Mad Max style stuff. It's really cool stuff. I really like what they've done with the designs. There's a bunch of cool kind of fantasy realistic-ish cars and a lot of neat weapons and signs and scenery and figures. And we're going to be focusing mostly on the cars tonight. David, I've been given a regular meteor and a wrecked boomslang. You have been given the exact opposite. So we're going to start with you. Tell me a little bit about what you've done since our last meeting.
I put on the matte clear coat, so I am ready to weather and re-weather as needed. I think we're good to go, Chuck.
All righty. Well, I think it's funny that you picked red because I picked the other Ferrari color, a bright yellow. And for my wrecked boomslang, and I have done a gloss clear over mine, which is making some of it harder to paint. I normally don't do a gloss clear, but I really wanted the filters and stuff to roll over the gloss finish and create some depth. And usually I do matte, and that tends to make things cling, and it can create a really good effect, but it can also really gum up the way that it looks. So it can really make stuff cling to it. Now, I've been using on mine, you can see here, I've got a lot of metallic pieces on it. I've got this cool set of metallics from Stuart Simple that are these fancy vials of, there's silver, copper, there's a black gold color that's really cool. That's kind of a gunmetal that I've been using on my meteor here. So I went with a light blue on my meteor because light blue is a great color for weathering because it makes the orange on rust really pop. I've not done my tires yet, but I've had a lot of fun with the Stuart Simple metallics. They've laid really well. I'm using Turbo Dork paint for the glass. That's a flip-flop paint that kind of does a little bit of a red and green chromatic thing to make it look like maybe this is some special futuristic tinted glass to block out the harsh rays of the unprotected sun from the atmosphere.
No more.
I did learn an important lesson about these larger pieces. I've never really dealt with pieces this big before or this solid with 3D printing. This thing was printed solid, and this is not their fault. This is my fault. But I put mine in my food dehydrator that I use to speed up the drying process. And you can see I've developed a little bit of a crack there. And that's going to be, I guess, a happy accident to my weathering. There's a few cracks in it now. That is not their fault. That's my fault because I forgot that adding heat to these things can soften them and make the process. It's really tricky when you're going with really solid pieces like this. The drying process on the inside of the car or the inside of the figure, whatever you're using, can get to where it's uneven, and then you put it in a high heat drying atmosphere, and that can pull it apart. So, I've got a few cracks that have developed on the wrecked boomslang. Of course, that doesn't matter. That just kind of adds to the character. But so it's been fun because usually I don't get to use these colors because they're very bright, and the stylized nature of these. It's really cool to kind of dive in with some harsher metallics, so not harsher, but bolder metallics, and have those stand out because it's a fantasy world. So it doesn't matter. Do you want to make it copper? Make it copper. Make it silver. Make it black gold. Make it straight up gold. Just have fun with it. So, there's no wrong answer here. And I went with a flat, warm khaki for the interior color. And we're going to put some filters on that to make that stand out. So, David, let's talk a bit about what you've got for your weathering kit since we last talked.
Okay. So, guys, and I'm talking to my fellow noobs out there, I didn't go all in. I didn't go crazy. I want Chuck to teach me what we can do with kind of a starter kit. So, on the last episode, you heard him talk about some products by Vallejo and Tamiya. I went out to a hobby store that we're all familiar with that rhymes and got this rust, stain, and streaking effects kit by Vallejo. And it includes eight paint colors that are all in the weathering spectrum, if you will, from chocolate brown to light rust. Those are the paints that I'm going to use. Hopefully, we'll get the tires looking right on that. I went in, got the Tamiya 3-pack that Chuck mentioned on the last episode. Go and watch that if you didn't check it out yet. This has got sand, light sand, and mud, which should be apropos. Chuck, I did a little research. Our locale is in the States around 2070 in a post-apocalyptic setting, so it can be really anywhere in the country if we want. And Chuck and I are both in the south of the United States. Plenty of mud and sand to be had. So I've got that. Indeed. I've got a chrome pen from Molotov if I want to touch up any of the chrome, knowing full well, guys, that as soon as you put any clear coat on that, it's going to be dull, which for this project is probably going to be perfect. And I think that's really all I got, guys. I went and got some brushes. I have 2 different style. I can stipple and I can do a little bit of brush work. Like I said, we're going to do the beginner level weathering today on my vehicles. And then Chuck is going to show you some really cool tools that some of the more experienced guys have. So, Chuck, did you want to lay out with what you've got now, or where do we want to go from here?
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with the stuff that David has, because David's got a really good paint set. It's one of the first weathering kits that I got. And we're going to talk about chipping. Chipping is one of the areas where a lot of people overlook it. A lot of people don't do a lot with it. They like to just slather on the rust, and you can do that. But I find that one of my favorite colors in that kit is German black brown. Why is it called that? I don't know, but it is good enough. It's smart enough, and by golly, people like it. And it's a great color because it's like I always say, not quite black is what you want to go for. So what I like to do is I take it, and I've got a wet palette, or you can use whatever palette you have, and just kind of lay out a drop of it. Because again, with these cars, a drop is really all you need. And then what I like to do, a little dab will do you. Now you can go advanced mode on this, and you can take a lighter version of the color that you've painted your car and go over those areas first. And that creates kind of a paint chipped look. We're not going to do that on these cars. But you can do that. You can mix a little white with red like David has, or you can mix a little white with blue like I have, and create kind of a primer layer for your chips. But what you want to do is when you go in, just start by making a couple of dabs on high surface areas where paint would rub through. So I'm going to do some right in here on the top of the fender where there would be some paint chipping. I'm going to do some on the tail fin here. Little dabs. And you want it, less is more on 1/64 scale. So you're just going to do a little bit of that here and there. So I'm going to let David do a couple of those, and he's got his little camera set up, secondary system. So you can also go along the bottom of your car in areas like here to kind of highlight chipping where paint would get chipped on the bottom of the car. Again, this is where finding a reference material car to go off of is really handy, where you can see where paint has chipped on it. So on cars like this, I like to use images from, cars that have been parked out in the desert. Where does the paint fade first? So I like to start with the little dabs here.
So we're not doing strokes. We're just tapping it. Like,
okay, so I'm just very lightly putting a few dots here and there. So go along the sharp edges of stuff, real tiny, like just enough to, look where body panels meet up. Look along fender edges. You can kind of lightly go along sharp corners and stuff. And again, just a few here and there, because especially with David's, he's doing kind of a more high end thing. So he's not going to have too much weathering on his. On his, less is going to definitely be more. I'm doing stuff like under the headlights. I'm doing it along the fender edges. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to go get my stippling brush and I'm going to do some much more heavier weathering along the top. But, for first, I'm going to be going along, and again, less is more. Very small. You can almost dry brush sometimes, but I'm just doing very small bits of chipping along the edges of the hood. They've got this nice big piece of trim, so there would be some chipping that might happen as that's vibrating around on the desert roads.
I gotcha. Yeah. Just where somebody might lay their big 50 cal gun up against the back bumper.
Right. So chipping is actually my favorite part of weathering because it really lets you add that character. It's again, your most strategic weathering is your chipping, because you're thinking, okay, where will this thing have the most chipping? So I've got this big tank turret up here. So I'm going to do a lot of chipping around that tank turret mount, because that turret's going to be flipping around and it's going to be taking paint with it as it's slinging back and forth. And I might even follow that up with some grease paint, some oily wash, and just do
maybe
a little
where hoses would connect and stuff like that, where people would be trying to manipulate pieces of metal. Okay.
So I'm starting to all under my guns.
The idea.
And again, it's okay because this is going to look initially like it's just like, okay, I'm just putting this dark brown on here. But the cool part about that is that you can then go back over it with things like a lighter rust color and water that down a little bit, and it will lay in there and create a more rusty finish.
Chuck, I got to say, as a first timer weathering, I have always enjoyed making normal, realistic cars. It's a lot harder than doing a weathering build, isn't it? Trying to do it clean, precise.
It can be, yeah, because especially if you're in a hurry, because it's very easy to get fingerprints on stuff, or if you mess up, it can be harder to clean up. Again, with clean builds, you do have the advantage usually of laying down a nice gloss coat. So the gloss coat can be pretty easy to get paint off of if you mess up on trim or whatever. But as opposed to a matte paint that might really cling to whatever you put on it. That's why I say you want to put clear layers between your levels of weathering, because those act as save files almost, so that you can, if it's not working out, you can wipe it off and go again. So I'm actually, this German black brown from Vallejo is spreading really well. So I'm actually going over some of the areas that are not going to be that color, but that I want to have a more matte finish. So when I go over with the color that I want to use, it'll cling better to the German black brown. So yeah, look at that. Looking good.
I like it. Not a bad way to spend a Friday night either.
No, sir. It keeps us off the streets. That's for sure.
That's
So,
exactly where I would be.
Look for sharp edges. Look for where things meet. Oh, we're cracking a cold one.
Do I need to be hitting my other car too?
I think you can focus on that one, or you can do both. You can do whatever. I'm about ready to start focusing more on doing some bigger chips and chunks.
All right.
But
I'll do that after we get done, and we'll have a finished product later. But tonight, for the in the interest of time, we'll just do one car each, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm kind of liking mine, man. It's got a little bit of the look of a former hypercar, but it's been through the wars.
Yet, because I am doing things a little out of order. Actually no, because it's weird. I'm not used to painting something where the tires are already on the car, or they're part of the car. So I would normally do the tires and wheels towards the end of the build anyway. But at the same time, it just feels strange to be doing this all in one lump piece, as opposed to like a diecast car where it's all completely apart. And that was the other thing too for me, was like with the windows. Like, what do you do with windows? And if you go to the Steve Jackson Games Kickstarter page, you can see some examples from some professional miniature painters and people who focus on that stuff more than the diecast stuff that David and I do. And it's really cool because they inspired me to try some stuff, because originally I was thinking, I'll paint them gloss black, or I'll paint it a gloss blue. And then I remembered I had this Turbo Dork flip flop paint, and I was like, they're doing some interesting blues and greens and grays with their glass, and some even oranges.
Yeah.
I was like, what, I'm gonna try that. And I'm glad I did, because I really think this is an interesting way to go about this. And when I'm done with it, I'm probably gonna hit that glass with a crystal clear finish to really make it pop. And
I like it.
Some self-leveling clear that I've got that's really thick, and give it that nice finished look.
I like mine. I like it.
All right. So the kit comes with black brown, but it also comes with chocolate brown. Now, the chocolate brown on the directions, as I recall, is more for doing different colors of chipping, which you can do. You can do it because it's a slightly lighter color. So you can go around on larger chips and mix it in there to get kind of a more mottled finish. For your car, because you're not really doing some really big chips, I would almost think to skip that one. For the next one, you kind of want to go darkest to lightest with weathering. So you start with your dark brown chipping. So your next step would probably be to skip to the dark rust color. And basically what you want to do there is go around more on the inside of each of your largest chips. So you're going to work darkest on the outside and work towards light in the middle. While he's doing that, I'm going to do some stippling on my hood to make it more of a universally chipped top. I want my car to look like a West Coast car, which means that it will have weathered from the top down. So that means that the paint on the top of the car fades first. So you end up starting with a stippled German black brown, and it starts to look something like this, which gives you this really nice base for laying the rust on top of it. And it gets you a little bit of that original color through the top to help that stand out. And I'm going to go around the back parts of the car and stipple along the top as well. Just kind of little dots to make things look a little more textured. Again, you don't want to go too crazy. So, because the middle part will be the most oxidized, so it's going to be the brightest. So,
gotcha. Okay. So we're surrounding the lighter part with the darker.
Yep. So you'll work your way in. I'm going to mix things up a little bit. So I'm going to add a little orange rust to mine. from a different manufacturer. This is AK Interactive Orange Rust. It's a much lighter orange, almost like a pumpkin color. And I'm going to do it more of a dry brush style stipple. I'm going to do it on just one side so you can see the effect there.
Chuck, are we going to be doing any happy trees tonight?
Oh, there's certainly going to be some happy accidents, that's for sure. And then what you can also do when you're not stippling is you can take your paint and like David's doing, I'm just going to go in on the inside of these larger chips, laying a little bit of this orange rust in there. And it'll look a little, you'll want to use the lighter rust colors that come with your kit in the middle of your chips.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So just for the sake of the video, here is light rust. Boy, that is like almost a flesh color.
Yep.
So I think I'm going to go with one of these other brushes that are just more of a super fine tip where I can really get some closer detail in there.
Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a rust wash and I'll just go and lightly lay a little rust wash in the middle of the chip and call that a day and give it a little streaking down. I don't remember if that kit comes with a rust wash. I think it does.
I would now, but I'm in the zone.
All right. We'll let David be in the zone here. I add some more chips actually to mine because I found some areas in the front where I think that it needs more chipping.
So Chuck, while people are watching us do this, think back to when you're making a 124 model in the early days. Why did you decide, I think that would look cool, beaten up and rusted out?
I always liked weathered and beaten up cars, in movies, and I liked watching, monster trucks crush cars, and, I liked the Herbie Goes Banana movie, which is the one where he gets all rusty. I always thought that was a really, I was always fascinated with the way cars, decay. And again, I think the Hot Wheels crack-ups really kind of, I found those fascinating because they were, cars that you could damage and then put back together and wreck again. And I read this article in Fine Scale Modeler one day, and it was about how to make a beat up 49 Mercury. And it was interesting because it wasn't specifically a junk car. It was the guy designed it to look like a beater car that would be, in the 1950s or 1960s that is, past its prime, but still functioning. So it was a very subtle weathering. And I thought that was fascinating to me. And I borrowed the book from my adopted grandfather, whose name was Chet Ralston. And that's who my son is named after. He was a very good model builder, big inspiration to me. And I took it to a 49 Ford model that I happened to have, and I got some military olive drab green because back then it wasn't that there weren't too many hobby shops around, and Walmart was what I had as a hobby shop, and that was back when they actually had a small setup of testers, cars, or car painting stuff, and there was some military stuff. So I got a military olive drab color, and I painted the undercut of the car brown, and I went back over it with the green, and I had dull coat, which was my first real exposure to a matte finish. And I realized that if you hit the windows with it, it frosted the windows. Of course, I didn't mask the windows. I just hit the whole thing, so it was totally frosted. And right. And then used sand. You were supposed to use sandpaper, and what you're supposed to use is like a 600 grit sandpaper. I didn't have that, so I used like 220 grit or something ridiculous, maybe 300 grit,
Just chewed it
and
up.
chewed it up. And but it still was the first model that I was actually like, hey, I'm happy with how this looks. Like I could see what I was doing here. And I even did things like, while the paint was wet, I threw dirt at it on the underside to give it kind of a rusty,
Okay.
crusty look.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. So now what I've been doing here while I've been talking is I've gotten a light rust wash going on this car. So you can see the texture is really starting to pop here, where I'm really getting a nice weathered look on the hood here, and I'm getting a little bit of a drip. So I'm going to dab that real quick. You want to get a little rust wash if you've got rust wash on the actual paint of the car too, because that's going to show where the paint is starting to oxidize through. But I tend to avoid doing it over the entire car because it just tends to be, a bit much. But but really, even if you just have 2 or 3 colors, if you've got, a dark, almost black brown, that's the real thing I think that sets good weathering and chipping apart, is having a color that is a very dark color. Mix that with a more orangey color and then just dab on a little bit of a rust wash around it. And you'll be really surprised at how effective that is at conveying paint wear through and rust and fading.
So this, just to clarify, this wash, this is what I'm looking at right here, a light rust wash.
Yes, absolutely.
And I can make broader strokes with that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So a wash is a very thin paint. And so it's designed more for covering large surface areas and creating almost like a filtered effect. There's washes and then there's filters. A filter is usually a bit stronger than a wash.
Yeah.
Do I have that backwards? No, a filter is usually a little stronger than a wash. A filter is designed more to tint the area that it's going over. So it's usually something like a green or a yellow or something to kind of give it like you're looking at it through a filter almost. Like, so you're thinking, you've got like a olive green tank and you put kind of a yellow wash over it. That's going to give it a more textured, mottled look. Washes tend
on this
to be
car.
more, yeah. So
I'm sorry. So like, where would I paint the entire car with a wash? Any place that's metal?
No, you could, or what I'm doing is I'm just going over the chipped areas very lightly with I've got a little thing. You can get these at the Dollar Tree. They're just little cup pallets, and I put a few drops of it, just literally just 2 or 3 drops in, and you can then just go over your chipped areas with that, and that will create a very nice textured rust effect. And what you can also do is get your paints, get your wash to where it's almost completely off the brush, and then you can just do some very light downstrokes.
So
and get some nice streaking effects going.
For the noobs, how long after applying the paint that we did in step 1 before it's safe to go back and start adding wash on top of it?
You can usually do it pretty quick. Like by the time you're done getting the one side of the car done, the other side that you've started with, you can usually go back over and start putting the washes on. So, I'm going over mine right now with a very lightly dampened brush and doing some downward strokes around my really rusty areas to get some nice streaking effects going.
I see. Yeah, that's what rust does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you'll notice that, it actually, I think, is a benefit if it's not completely dry, because that allows the paints to meld a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, with rust, we're talking about something that is organic, it's textured, it's not going to be solid colors just about anywhere that it goes. So adding that paint on top of paint, giving it that almost wet application can really go a long way.
You know what's crazy about this, Chuck, is I just never thought I would be doing this. Even as somebody who customizes, this was always another level that I thought was too hard to learn, going to be too expensive to get what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you guys, for $35.
Yeah, and those kits do go on
get
sale
some
there
really
from
good
time
effects.
to time. Yeah. And
Yeah,
the thing
yeah.
is with these cars, because it's so small, that paint set will last you longer than you'll customize cars. It will go bad
Yep.
before you run out of paint. The
I
only
gotta
one
say,
that
man,
might
I'm pretty.
might run through is the rust wash. So another trick that you can do with the rust wash that's really cool is you can go over, now David, you haven't done your chrome yet, but you can go over your chrome with that rust wash and give it a nice kind of
I'm gonna
patinaed
do that.
look
I'm gonna do
to
that
your
on the
chrome piece.
guns.
So
Yeah, I've got some. I've got a lot of chrome on this guy right here. All of my ammunition.
yep.
Oh, Chuck, this is this is scary. How good a rookie can make something look. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying
you're on
this
to my
car looks
secret
really
now.
great.
Turns
Yeah.
out weathering can be pretty easy, but it's very easy to overdo too. So that's the
Right.
trick. That's
That's
why I say
the
don't
rub.
slather the rust wash all over it, because everybody does that, and yeah, it does look cool, but you know, having those, if you look at real patinaed cars, there's still going to be parts of them that the paint is still solid. There's actually a lot of cars tend to be shinier than a lot of people do with their weathered. They're going to do flat colors. I've really kind of embraced lately doing more glossy weathered builds, because
Mm-hmm.
if you look at a lot of rusty cars, sometimes there's a decent amount of them that still have shiny paint on them, especially old single stage paint jobs where
Yep.
the clear coat isn't there to fade, and yeah, you can get a really nice effect pretty quickly. So
I'm digging it.
yep, so check that out. I don't know if you can see it or not with your pixelation,
Yep.
but
Yep. No, it's looking great.
thanks. So, and feel free to go back and go, wait a second, maybe I do want to add some more chipping here, or maybe I want to, there's a lot of opportunity with weathering to go back. The hardest part is remembering where to put your hands, because it's very easy to leave a big old
Take
thumbprint
off what you just did.
and or take off what you just did. Exactly. So I really appreciate everybody who's hanging out with us. I'm sure this is like watching paint dry, maybe for some people, but literally.
Guys, like when you do this though, and I'll talk to the viewers for a second. It makes you want to get the game and play it, and actually, that takes it to another level when you've got your artwork on the table.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and that's something that I think is so cool about these types of games, is that the open sourceness of it, almost, that you can make it your own, that you can personalize the cars, that you can make them, put your colors on them, you can put graphics on them if you want to print something out, if you want to make an ice cream truck with a machine gun on it, you can, or you can make a tow truck, or you can make an ambulance. You can do whatever you want. There's, it's an open world, and there's no right way or wrong way. You can paint the guns whatever colors you want. You can make them neon green for all that matters. It's a fantasy world, and the sky is the limit.
Teamwork makes the dream work, and I believe I can fly.
There you go. Eat your Wheaties, kids. So I am...
This episode of Platitude Breakdown has been brought to you
by Steve Jackson Games. If you stick around, we got some really cool stuff coming down the pike for Diecast Media Network that we can't talk about just yet, but it's really exciting stuff that is going to be literally changing, I think, how some diecast collecting is done. So, not to put too fine a point on it, but stick around because we got some really cool stuff with a really cool partner that we're working on that I really wish I could tell you about right now, but I cannot. So,
same here. Yeah, you guys, for you OG Diecast Breakdown and Diecast Media Network subscribers, you're going to be proud of us. You're going to be proud of David, Chuck, and Mark. It's really fun watching something grow, and that was never like the mission statement, but I think it's a byproduct of hearing what you fans want and what you're interested in, and we try and accommodate that and go after those guests, and it has opened a lot of fantastic doors. So for those of you that have been watching with us for years now, thank you so much.
Well, where are you at, David? What are you thinking?
I'm trying. I think I'm happy with mine. I don't want it to lose its standing as one of the flashier cars in this world, so I'm not going to go too crazy on the rust.
Yeah, now that is an important thing to remember too. Is the most important thing to remember with weathering is when to walk away, because it's very easy to just keep going over, and the next thing you know, the whole car is covered in whatever. So we're doing some pretty basic weathering here. David, were you able to find any panel liner?
No, as a matter of fact, I was not. Did not have it at my store.
Okay, well, that is quite all right. And as we're wrapping things up here, I think I'm going to do a quick demonstration of panel liner for stuff like this. There's Tamiya is pretty hard to beat. There are several other people out there, but I like the Tamiyas because they come with their own little applicator. And one of these guys, you can get them on the big box sites for about $10, usually less. They've got a black, they've got a dark brown, and they got a dark gray. And I recommend having one of each. The dark gray is great if you've got a very light car, if you're doing something in white, because the black will really, really stand out on it. And dark brown is great for weathered builds because it really adds kind of a more organic look to it. And the best part about these is they have these nice little applicators. So you can just kind of pull that out. It's part of the lid. And then you just kind of touch it to the area that you want to have the sweet capillary action, as it's called, to
let gravity do its thing.
Yeah, the surface tension of the paint will go in there, and you'll end up with something that looks a little like this. And you get a nice pop door, and you'll notice there's a little droplet on there, and that's fine. Because when this stuff dries, it's also very easy to rub off. It's oil-based, so you might need a little dab of mineral spirits or a little dab of paint thinner to go on a cotton swab, and you just kind of run it lightly over the area on the top of the car where it dries, and it goes right away. So I can even just wipe it down with my finger, and there you go. And I've put some panel liner in the wheel hubs, So there's it without. This is the side without.
Mm-hmm.
And there it is with. So you can see
yeah.
the door panels are definitely bolder. It really helps to set those things apart. You can even lay it in areas of the car, like these fender curves where the hood meets. You can run it along trim. And the cool thing about the dark brown is that it can also act as its own little bit of extra weathering, and it'll look like grime and schmutz that have sunk into the finish of the car. And we'll post pictures of these when we're done with them, so you'll get a proper look at them. So check out the community tab on our channel so you can see the finished product. David, what are you thinking right now that you've done your first real weathering?
Yeah, I really want to do more. I want to play around with the textures. I want to, gosh, even now my brain, Chuck, is like, well, how would it look different in a state where there's snow? How would
Right.
it look different?
Oh,
Florida versus California.
yeah. And you brought up, thank you for reminding me. We've got your powders, your weathering powders to work with. So let's bust those out real quick. So you've got the A kit, which has sand, light sand, and mud. So what I like to do is I'll think, okay, well, look at the color of the car and go, what would really stand out on it? So you've got a red car, I've got a blue car. So I'm going to probably go with a darker color on mine. So I'm going to go with the mud. And I'm going to take this little thing. It's just like a little makeup applicator type thing. You've got your 3 different colors, and you just kind of rub on one side until you get it all in there nice and good. And then you just kind of dab it, very, very light strokes on these. Because you're doing mud, you go along the bottom of the car, or you're doing sand, areas where the tires would get kicked up, would kick up dust and dirt. And I love weathering powders because they are just like, it's almost like cheating. And I really wish you could have gotten the rust one too. But the kit that you've got, you can do all the weathering that you want with that kit that you've got. So you actually have a good mixture, because you can do the dust and dirt with this kit, and then do the rust with the other one. And again, that's really all you need. I've seen people do really great stuff with just some Citadel Riser rust, and they've got this dry orange rust paint that you can go over it, or it's Riser rust and something corrosion paint. That's a whole different thing, because that's a textured paint with like a dry brush application on top. So but yeah, you just kind of dab on a little rust, and then you dab on a little mud, and again, you want to think about how the car is going to weather. So the rust is going to be on the bottom of the car. That's going to be the most low part of the car, and work your way up. So you've got your rust, then you got your paint, then you're going to have the stuff that's on top of the paint. That'll be your dirt, your dust, your sand, your mud. And so for these cars, we're just going to do, and I, as I mentioned in the previous video, I get a little crazy. I can do 51 steps of weathering if I want to, doing filters, doing mismatched body panels, doing panel liners, dirt filters. MIG makes some really great dirt filters, both in acrylic and in oil based. But again, with 1/64 scale, the beauty of it is that less is really more. The bigger ones, you do have to focus more on adding different layers to get depth. But because the cars are so small, it's very easy to have more just be more, and you end up with something that is just a small modeled mess. So
as we wrap it up, do we want to give any tips on making our wheels, do we need to apply some of this on the wheels, or are we going to paint the wheels?
So
the tires,
what we're going to do, and again, we're doing things a little out of order here, but to paint the wheels, like I'm using Vallejo Air Tire Black. Tamiya also makes a really nice rubber tire color. In fact, I think it's Vallejo makes a whole kit on doing tires that you can do. That the tire black is the base, and then they have everything from dust layers to an ivory finish. But for these cars, I find that tire black is enough. And David, you can take the German black brown and the chocolate brown and maybe mix it with a little gray on yours.
Yeah.
I'm just laying in my tire black on real quick here.
I think I'll do that.
But again, you want to go lighter than you'd think it would be. So if you've got like a light gray and you want to mix it with a little German black, and again, I think it's really interesting. The Vallejo tire black almost has like a dark olive look to it. There's definitely a hint of something that is not, it's not monochrome. It's not gray. There's a green, there's a brown feel to it. There's a drabness to it.
Secret sauce.
Yep.
It's a secret sauce.
And something I do with a lot of my builds, because the tires that the real riders and stuff, they come in beautiful black rubber, but that can, especially on a weathered build, take away a bit of the realism as you go, well, wait a second, why does this weathered barn find have dark black shiny tires?
Yeah.
So it's funny, when I originally decided I was going to do customs, originally I thought, I'm not even going to care about the wheels. Like, I'm just going to focus on the bodies. And then I realized how much the wheels really affect the car. And, there's a reason why there are people out there that just do wheel swaps, because it looks really good.
I'm so glad you said that. The right wheels will make or break a custom for me, especially for a guy that likes realism.
Yep.
You cannot put 5-spoke, or Kragers on a 1968 JDM
right
vehicle.
It's not going to
look
look right.
Your mind just tells you it's not right.
Yep. In fact, while I got the tire black out, I'm going to do my wrecked boom slang over here, just so I'm not wasting paint. That's the other thing too, that you have to make peace with. There's going to be wasted paint, whether you're airbrushing or you're brush painting. So that's one of the reasons why I've actually started building several cars at once, is because you go, okay, well, I'll need maybe 2 drops of paint to do this. And then you're realizing I really needed not even 1 drop of paint to do this little tiny bit of the car. And now it's funny, you'll find yourself lamenting a drop of paint. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just crazy about that. But these little paint guys are not cheap. Some of them can be $6-7 for, we're talking, what is this? 0.57 fluid ounces, 17 milliliters. It's like
liquid gold.
Yep. I don't even want to think about what that would cost per gallon. Somebody in the comments do the math on that. But
or don't.
Yeah.
We may not want to know.
We may not want to know. Hey, we didn't get into this job to make money. And it's not a job.
I did. If we're not independently wealthy by now, I don't know why we're even doing it.
Right? As Derek says, it's not about the cars, it's about the money.
It's Freaky Friday, so why not?
Yeah, why not? That's opposite worlds, Derek.
What do you think, Chuck? I'm digging it. Got some
looking maybe sharp
dust,
there.
Dust coming up under the rocker.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm liking mine too. I'm gonna need to do a little touch up on a few things, do some more metal plating, but I'm really liking how these are turning out. They're great bases to work from. Again, not our typical diecast build, but they're in our favorite scale, 1/64, and it was very kind of them to think of us, and I appreciate that Steve Jackson is a forward-thinking company and reaching out to the diecast collecting world and making stuff for us to build. So shout out to them, and hopefully we'll have them on the show again soon to talk more about this, because I think it's still something that a lot of this community is sleeping on. Even the people who build Mad Max style cars are sleeping on, because they'll build the cars but not do anything with them, and it's a fun way to enjoy the hobby with friends, and you don't have to worry about whether your car rolls well or not. You're not spending hours and hours shaving wheels and doing all that. I mean, that's a lot of fun too. I did that. I'm still waiting to see my car race on the Tiny Track Cars track, but this is something that you can build one of these in an evening and get out there with your friends and have a blast, and just try something new. And I
just enhance your whole diecast hobby.
Exactly. And I'm a huge advocate for board gaming, just because it's a great way to get people together. You're not on screens, you're not passively taking something in, you're actively engaging with others, and it's a great icebreaker, especially if you're not a particularly extroverted person. It gives you something to talk about, and a good way to make friends. And there are a lot of game shops out there in just about every city in this great country of ours and around the world that do tabletop gaming, that'll do Warhammer, or that will do D&D nights and stuff. And those guys are certainly open. My local shop was very open to me coming in there and starting a Car Wars thing. I would love to do that someday. I don't know when. Maybe when my kids are in college, I'll do that. But yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to call that here. We've been going for almost an hour now, and I'm got a lot to cut down on this, but I think it's going to be I really appreciate everybody who's stuck around while we talk this out, and hopefully you learned a thing or two. So, again, check out David's channel, Twice Diecast. Check out drivendreams.org. And if you want to support us in this crazy mission, you can go to diecastmedianetwork.com and join our Patreon. But this is again, shout out to the Carnage 2-pack from Steve Jackson Games. We'll be linking to that in the description. Go check that out and get some cool STL files. Again, we were shipped these printed. You're not getting that with this kit. You're getting the files to print them on your own printer. And there are a lot of great videos out there for learning how to 3D print. That's how I learned how to do it. It's the barrier to entry is very low anymore. The software is all free. The printers are a couple $100, and you'll be amazed what you can do with a little trial and error.
Just try it. It's fun. Who cares if you can't do it, if it looks terrible? Who cares?
The first ones always do. And the beauty with weathering too is you can always be like, oh, I meant to do it that way. So
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So as always, I want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.